Time for our discussion segment. We'll be looking at the electricity sector in Nigeria and the 10th grid collapse that has happened in such a short period of time. Now, Nigeria have been thrown into yet another blackout yesterday as the grid collapsed for the 10th time in 2024. This is according to the official handle of Nigerian National Grid's handle on X. The development comes after the grid collapsed 3 times in 1 week towards the end of last month. The latest development brings grid disturbance incidents to 10 in 2024 alone. The minister also said there is a need to have power grids in different regions or states to put an end to incessant grid collapse. According to him, having multiple power grids in each region and state would ensure stability. He also noted that the decentralization of the power sector would help the plan to build grids in each region, saying this was made possible by the Electricity Act signed by President Bola Tinubu in 2023. Now we have joining us via Zoom Dr. Sam Amadi, former chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC. Good morning, Dr. Sam. It's good to have you with us here in the studio or via Zoom.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. All right.
Yes, thank you.
Dr. Sam, thank you for joining us. Now, in your thoughts and in your experience, what's your take on the frequent grid collapse? What would you say is happening based on your previous experience? We've seen the 10th this year. We saw twice, 3 times in a week. Share your thoughts with us on that.
Well, I think it's a true measure of where we are now in terms of our capability, in terms of power sector, the available supply. The last one is a result of TCN says the distribution companies are not able to receive load, meaning they have weak capacity to take some of the power that the transmission company is sending to them. So these perennial collapses speak to the weakness of the grid, speak to the lack of capacity in managing the grid, speak to the fact that most of our grid probably needs to be recalibrated. A lot of work needs to be done to restructuring in terms of a large regional geopolitical zones so that the grid is looped in and the grid is stable. So it's all about the lack of capacity currently in the electricity industry.
All right, now at this point in time, Nigerians are tired of hearing of grid collapse, various grid collapse. So you've mentioned several things, but the minister kept saying decentralization and regional grid could be the possible solution. Do you agree to that? And what could be the major setbacks in achieving that? And is it really the solution we need at this point in time?
I think decentralization helps because the idea, for example, if there's a problem with from let's say Zaria to Shiroro or Kaduna to Shiroro, Abuja to Shiroro, or the Zaria to Shiroro line, it will affect the whole of southern Nigeria. So the fact that if you now make regional, it means that there will be smaller space to manage. It's like breaking the road from Abuja to Kaduna into patches, and those patches are under different control. So it means that if you ring-fence this out, if there's an accident on this part, maybe the other part continue. That's actually what they mean by regionalizing the grid. But the problem is this: is still that grid, as small as you have made it, needs to be managed well. It needs to have investment. And the other side of it is that if the grid is regionalized, if you don't have enough supply, if you don't have enough capacity, long outages because they don't have sufficient supply. So the regional structure can help. But more than that, we need to have states. You need to have state governors come into the state governors come in, make investments, also support their grid. So if a northeast grid or northern grid, it doesn't just lie there. They need investments. You need to develop more generation capacity in the north, maybe through solar or through the dams, to ensure they have enough support, enough capacity to carry the grid. So I think that yes, the minister is right in a sense, but at the same time, the minister is too simple. The answer is not just decentralizing. No, the answer is about investments, getting the right kind of management, improving regulation at the level of NERC, the NERC, and ensuring that the policies and the regulations are able to optimize investment and attract more investment from local, foreign, and governments.
All right. Now we know that with Nigerians' frequent grid collapse, it could either be due to technical policy or a combination of both related issues towards it. But during your tenure, grid reliability was a major concern. So, what specific regulatory and infrastructural change would you recommend at this point in time that could prevent future collapse, or at least give a, would I say, a tip kind of solution that wouldn't see Nigeria experience so much grid collapse as we are today?
Very good question. I think if you look at data, we had less grid collapse towards the end after privatization because three things happened. One, we were able to improve the coordination between distribution and transmission by enhancing the capacity of the distribution companies to receive more load from transmission companies. So I think that should be focused on improving the reliability at the level of distribution. Two, the clarity regarding management of spinning reserves and other forms of reserves. So if you don't have good reserves, if you can't have generators provide reserve, it'll be difficult not to have fluctuations, uncertainties, or reliability and collapse. And the third one is that one of some of the things we did was that we had a very task force approach. So we identify the vulnerability system and we put a task force to monitor that handshake between distribution and the transmission. And that calls for effective leadership at the level of the ministry, and the regulator should be more fire on time, the vulnerable and ensure that there are timely deployment of interventions. For example, they talk about one of the collapses was because of the fire incident, and it took a long time to bring back the system. So I think that the true regulatory incentivization of performance of distributors and of generators and of transmission company, you will improve real-time management of the. So I think the problem is that the ministry and the regulator need to do to provide incentive for improvement in the performance of the DISCOs and the TCN. There is a slacking of leadership in the sector, and it explains why you have these so many. We never had this level of weekly, options. For example, in many years we have only 2 or 3 the whole year, but now we're talking with 3 months, 10. I mean, it speaks to the weakness of the leadership of the sector at the policy and regulatory level.
All right, talking about policy and regulatory frameworks, I'm glad you raised that up. Now let's take a step backward rather to the decentralization and regional grid we spoke about and the current state of the electricity sector in Nigeria. Based on your experience, what policy and regulatory framework needs to be put in place to see the actualization if this decentralized original grid gets, it gets the attention it deserves? What policy and framework do you think could be put in place to actualize that? And what policy and frameworks would be needed in the electricity sector at this point in time?
First, I think electricity gives the states the powers to now go and get their own supply and create the electricity market. And many states have done that in the south. Imo, Enugu, Edo, now Ondo Ekiti, all getting approval from NERC to work towards creating their own market. But what is missing here now? I think the federal government should set up a small team to study how the viability of this regionalization of the market. If this is not done, we're going to lead into a chaos. I mean, many states are pretending they have the capacity to quickly develop their own market when the federal government is struggling. So it seems to me that what is needed now is a national on how to work to
We're experiencing network.
the idea of their own electricity market. He argued that maybe we need to have a federal mandated implementation plan that provides clarity, that helps the states to learn how to work experience. After over 20-something years of trying to running the national grid in a regulated form, they have experience. States don't have any experience, and they are going on creating laws here and there that's conflicting among themselves, not taking cognizance of the market's evolution. Not my fear is that this new arrangement, where states are creating their own market, would undermine the demand or the need for regular, reliable, adequate power. The federal government now needs to come together, bring the states together, and try to provide clarity support system that ensures that, for example, if Kaduna State has a power electricity market, Kano, two of them can collaborate. You can't create a viable market at the state level now. You have to do it at the regional level. So we need to have a planned transition. Centralized electricity grid to regionalize. We are not having that policy framework. We have the act that talks about the right to exit, but we have no policy framework that guides the emergence of this regional or state-based electricity market. And I think we might be entering into a disastrous period where you see even the little power we won't have. You just see that to the darkness. I mean, the states really don't have the capacity on their own to create state-based electricity market. Forget what they're doing in some of the southern states. They're going to run into trouble soon because you don't have the technical capacity, you don't have the experience. The federal government is struggling with all this experience. How about states?
All right. I love how that conversation went. Now, there's something that was, that stood out during your tenure, the multi-year tariff order you implemented aimed at balancing cost-reflective tariffs with consumer affordability. What are your thoughts on the recent tariff hike? Do you believe they align with this multi-year tariff order principle that you set in place? And we also see discos, just in the news today, hiking the price of meters from 117,000 to 149,800 naira. Meters are meant to make this cost effective so that the money being paid could be paid to the appropriate channels and funding for the electricity distribution companies. But with the cost of meter, won't we see people deciding to go the wrong way and thereby costing money to the electricity sector in Nigeria? All of this, does it go in line with this multi-year tariff order that was put in place? And what would you suggest would be a way out of metering and costing of electricity in Nigeria?
Well, I think first, the new tariff does not align properly with the methodology tariff estimation that we set up. What we set up was a tariff structure that aligns consumption to what you pay, not to categorize customers around what they can pay. So the so-called band A to whatever band is not the proper approach to tariff setting. The proper approach to tariff setting is based on loads, meaning you are either customer residential 1, 2, 3, 4, based on your meter size, your load. So you don't have to have an A on the same line. So one street is band A, the other street is band B. Now NERC argues that this is based on feeder, but the feeder costs are not different. So I think it's arbitrary, and that's why I think it was also somewhat unconstitutional It's a discrimination. I mean, you can't ask some customers that they're going to have 20 hours regular minimum, and others could have 10 hours. That's discriminatory. The idea of non-discrimination in the sector, have the right to consume power according to what they can pay and according to what's available. So if there are outages, local faults, and their area doesn't have up to 10 hours, that's fine. But you can't just allocate to some people more power and others less power. Power is a product that should be according to purchasing power, what you can pay for, and availability. That's number one. Number two, I think the new tariff was designed to respond to a macroeconomic crisis. Basically, the devaluation of the currency, the dollar impact, and inflation that goes with it, forex crisis, meant that the debt in the market or debt in the city market kind of quadrupled. So from a 400 billion, for example, debt, total debt, you move to a trillion, 1 point something trillion debt. So that massive migration of debt meant that NERC now had to look for a fiscal tool in their regulatory toolbox outside. And what it was simple, it's okay, we're going to get more money, more people, and get more power. We take the more money from them. So that's what happened. It's not the proper way. Again, the metering issue you talked about, you're absolutely right. You see, meter is indexed to inflation. So if the meter was 40, let's say 115,000 naira, naira was, let's say, 700 or thereabout. The cost will move upward because it's indexed to real price in the market.
I guess seems to be
Is the
frozen.
real cost.
And
The meter cost is the real cost that you buy the real cost in which you buy the meter, not imaginary. And so the result, therefore, is that if there's increase.
All right, seems we're having a little network glitch. We hope our guest
We expect increase in propensity to steal power. That's real. If people, you're right. If meter cost is high and the customer has to pay for it, then the estimated customer do not have meter, then their interest will be to bypass. I mean, today's income is so low. People have their income is not increasing as cost is increasing. So the tendency will be that more people will sort to bypass. So I think it's in the interest of the sector that NERC tries to regulate properly metering costs and cost of energy, and that way you can protect. You can ensure that less people will be inclined to bypass. There's a propensity or a proportionality between cost of energy, poverty, and the disposition to tamper or steal energy, as the case may be.
Okay, like the fact you said that the current tariff does not align with the multi-year tariff order. Now, at this point, with how discriminatory you said it sounds, with some people receiving a certain amount of hours of light and some people receiving lesser amount of light, when it's power and everyone deserves to, receive the same but pay based on load usage, if I got you correctly. But at this point in time, what can regulators do? Because Nigerians are now complaining that even the band A that is supposed to get 20 hours of electricity are not getting it. They are not seeing the dividends of what they are paying for. So at this point, what would you encourage regulators to do to ensure that Nigerians get what it is they are paying for? They expect better electricity. If I am on band A, I expect to get the 20 hours of light I'm paying for. So what can be done to see that people are paying for the worth at which they are getting? Do they reverse it, or what can be done to up their game at this point?
I think we need to be, the first principle of regulation is honest credibility. You have to be honest and tell the consumers what it is. What it is this, that based on the inflationary trend, we're going to see increase in cost of electricity. So go ahead, cancel this band nonsense. Let everybody go back to the original stuff, which is you are a residential consumer, you use or you use ordinary three-phase meter, you are a commercial customer, you are an industrial customer, and so on and so forth. So everybody have their tariff rates. Now, you can increase tariff because the tariff itself is cost. The cost changes, the tariff could change. Now, if the federal government increase cost through exchange rate policy, then they should be very clear and say, federal government, you either provide subsidy or customers in full. But then, so if I'm a band A, if I'm a residential customer 1 or 2, and I used to pay 22 naira per kilowatt hour, and I'm going to pay now 60 naira. It should be very clear that this is a real cost, and the cost of that inflation, of that increase, is the foreign exchange and the inflation. Simple. So that's very honest. Everybody knows they're paying more. Now, there's no way that this market can guarantee 20 hours minimum supply to all the band A customers for ordinary people. It's not going to work. We don't have any incapacity. So how are you going to increase Mr. B without depleting Mr. A? That's mathematics. So when they say you're going to have hours, that's not. The only way you can increase power that people consume is that you have more power coming. There was no new power procured. It was just a fiscal policy. It was just a macroeconomic indicator that changed. You need to get more money, so people pay more. So it was a show. At the end of the day, both band A will not get 20 hours of light, and band B will get less because there's no power to share. So my honest view was, be honest and take this tariff to reasonable increase where everybody will bear some brunt, or tell government to subsidize the impact they created through their, in my view, bad forex policy. What drove it is not rise in power. We didn't have more power, and so we can't distribute more power to people. And telling band A, and the discos are now expanding band A, so they give more to band A. They keep increasing because they make more money. So this is actually a financial strategy to increase revenue in the industry, maybe to stave off the looming bankruptcy of the sector. It's not improving quality of service to customer. That's the truth about it. Because there was no new procurement of power, no improvement in services.
Thank you for that. I love the fact that you spoke on transparency and honesty, which is indeed an eye-opener and something Nigerians keep calling for. Now, in conclusion, looking at the way forward, I would ask you this question. If you could lead another phase today in the Nigerian electricity sector, if you would be a top just the way you were then in the electricity sector today, what would be your top priority, and how would you address both short-term and long-term improvements and sustainability? What would you do differently that would make Nigerians see a difference? So let's project to the future.
So if I was going to be back there, assuming, well, the first thing I would focus on the short term would be to quickly drive down improvement in the management of existing infrastructure, set up a real task force that push the discos to optimize efficiency. So what does that mean? Okay, we don't have the money now to build new lines. We don't have the money now to expand distribution and transmission, but we should be able to ensure that those lines are serviced on time, that those lines are cleared on time, that so if there's an outage, if suddenly there's rain, for example, and lines will go off, what's the recovery hour? You have to put everybody on their toe to ensure noticeable improvement. So it's about using what you have in the most efficient form. That should be short term. That could give you an upgrade of an average of 3 to 5 hours of availability for every class of customers. That's an improvement. So if you have 8 hours, it could mean that without any new investment, we can have additional 5 hours to your daily supply of power. The medium to short term is that, the medium to long term is that we're going to get back to reviewing the performance of the discos and the transmission company, meaning that there will be a peer review process in which we benchmark them to a criteria in 6 months. This is a criteria of performance. If they don't perform, you exit them through corporate policy. So like in the banks, so if they don't perform, then we look for institutional investors to take over them, some of them. So it tells us they have the financial nor technical capacity to meet the industry benchmark. So that set of peer review will trigger a realignment of the industry. Start from short term, which is immediate improvement, medium review of the performance indicators, and resetting of back for 6 months, and then you catalyze into a long new takeovers by institutional players who inject more equity and more capacity, and redesigning the ownership structure of the market. Start a new review, new national policy on electricity, whose end will be how do we move into 100 to 80,000 to 100,000 megawatts in about 10 years. Does it mean, we farm it out to global performers from China? Does it mean we crowd in more investors to strengthen the market? We just have to find a way to enter into a 60 to 80,000 megawatts daily supply in the next 5 to 10 years to survive as an economy and as a people.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Amadi. I would have loved to extend this conversation, but unfortunately, we've run out of time, but it was a very, very informative section. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you so much.
That was Dr. Sam Amadi, former chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC there, and we were talking about the frequent grid collapse, way out, way forward, possible solutions, and lapses and loopholes. I hope you were able to take something away from that conversation. It's actually been very informative. Well, do not go anywhere, because right after the break, we'll be looking at the stories that made it to the front pages of the newspaper, and we would be having our reviewer here with us in the studio. So do stay, we'll be right back.